Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Ha'olam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'nasan Lanu Es Toraso Baruch Atah Adonai Nosein HaTorah Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. All right, so this is the final class. I was very surprised it took us 4 classes, but I think one class we spoke about something else, and last class we got into a very, very beautiful discussion actually on modesty. I don't know if anyone had anything that happened to them over the week from that conversation. Did anyone like remember it and do anything different because of it? It's okay if not, but it was very beautiful how people really shared, and really there was a very strong, we don't usually talk about that so much. I mean, sometimes we've spoken about it. I know we had a few classes about covering our hair. That was a while ago. I remember we did that. We don't so much talk about modesty, and it was really beautiful how so many beautiful things were shared.
Cyril?
Yes.
When you talk about modesty, is it mostly appearance or behavior also?
It's interesting question. It's both, but there's a primary emphasis in Jewish law on the obligation of the woman to have modest dress. Modest dress for a married woman includes covering her hair, and for any woman, any girl over the age 3 is covering the collarbones, front and back, covering the elbows at all times, covering the knees, if you're standing, if you're sitting, if you're walking, if you're jumping. Skirts, not pants. That's not loud, flashy, not tight, form-fitting. All of those are laws of modest dress. There is a concept as well of being modest in one's thoughts, of being, we probably wouldn't use the word modest, we might use the word refined, but that's what it means, being modest in your choice of words, being modest in what you allow yourself to think about, being modest, refined in what you allow yourself to absorb, to read, to see, to note, the magazine, the book, the movie, the video, all of those. Also, there's a concept of modesty, which means discretion and refinement. But unlike other places where you might say, well, it's equal, you can either be modest in your thoughts or in your speech or in your actions, we would say no. Modesty in dress is very, very paramount importance. And of course, there's also a component of modesty in speech and modesty in thought as well. Definitely modest behavior, like, a person will be told, like yell across the street to someone, that's not modest, it's not refined, doesn't mean you're saying anything wrong. It's just drawing attention to yourself in an inappropriate way. But the A1 is always going to be modesty in dress. But definitely if a person was working on modesty, what Rivka's saying is 100% true. If you're working on modesty and maybe you just feel you're just so modest in your dress, there's nothing to do, or you more feel like you're not really able to stretch right now in your dress, but you want to add in modesty, one could definitely add in modesty in terms of the discretion of their word choices, modesty in terms of what they allow themselves to think about, modesty in terms of what they allow themselves to watch, to read, to see, modesty in terms of what they allow themselves to do or not do in terms of their behaviors. All of those are definitely legitimate areas to add, to enhance modesty. Absolutely. Any other questions or thoughts on this? Okay, so as I said, I don't know if people after Monday night remember Monday night, but hopefully some thoughts retained, and maybe there's some glimmers of it during the week as well. So we are about to finish this talk. This is our 4th time, and again, I had no vision this was going to take me more than twice max, but that's okay, because we, as I said, I felt last week that was very, very valuable, that very valuable conversation. So just to remind ourselves of this whole perspective of this talk. This talk, as we said, was culled from the Shabbos before and the Shabbos after the 10th of Shvat, which is, the anniversary of the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. And in both of these talks, before and after, the Rebbe focused on women, on the specialness of women. And we said that this was relating to the previous Rebbe, because the previous Rebbe was the first Rebbe who focused on women, not an individual woman, where maybe that happened in previous generations, but on groups of women in general. As we said in Riga, there were these study groups of Jewish girls, of Jewish women, who were doing this very, very radical thing called studying Hasidic texts. Women studying Hasidus, what's going on? And the previous Rebbe encouraged this. And the Rebbe explains, why did he encourage it? Because he knew that these women are the ones bringing Mashiach. Women bring Mashiach. So since women bring Mashiach, and we're at the cusp of Mashiach's coming, we need to strengthen the women so they can do their job. And we see this as a historical imperative. We discussed, we said, by the giving of the Torah, by the dedication of the tabernacle, women were there first, women were there better. So women have been at the forefront of all the historically significant things in our history. In this talk, the Rebbe doesn't go into it, but in other talks, the Rebbe also speaks about entering Israel, and also there shows women's superiority in the relationship to the land of Israel over the men. So in general, we're like amazing. First, better, and definitely as the catalyst to bringing redemption, where the Rebbe quotes, and again, this isn't the only time the Rebbe discusses these ideas. In Egypt, we did it. In all the generations, we do it. The future redemption is going to be just like Egypt. And again, that means it's going to be us. And as the Rebbe often quotes from the Arizal, the second greatest Kabbalist of all times, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, that we are the reincarnation of those women. So not only do women in general have the power to bring redemption, and our ancestors in Egypt, those awesome women did it. We were those awesome women. We are them. And God brought us back because he needs us to do it again. Then we connected this to the Rebbe Rayatz. We spoke about women in his life, connecting it to the Hasidic discourse he wrote for his passing, and how it was written in honor of women. And it opens up with a verse that alludes to the Jewish people as women. And it speaks about a woman's work, so to speak, because serving God with the physical is what women are even better at than men. We connected it to the Torah portion of Bo, the idea of Bo coming to Paro, to this great source of God's revelation, which is what happened to the previous Rebbe and why he passed away. He threw away his life to bring the redemption. He sacrificed his life. He encountered this very great energy to draw it down and create redemption, and passed away in the process. And we also connected it to light, and to the lights of women lighting those Shabbos candles that we spoke about last week. We also connected it to the Torah portion of Beshalach, which was the idea of the song, how the women, after the splitting of the sea, their song was better than the men's. They had the tambourines, the drums, the musical instruments, they were dancing, whole body experience. And we said, why? I mean, it was only one verse, the men's is like 19. So why was our song so much better? We said it was better because Miriam was the leader of the Jewish women. Miriam imparted to us her pain over exile, which is because of her belief in redemption. If you don't believe so much in redemption, you sort of get used to exile. But if you really believe in redemption, you say, this is abnormal. So such pain in exile because of such belief in redemption. So when it happened, when the redemption happened, the joy, the depth of joy of these women, because the depth of their pain was far greater, the depth of their belief was far greater, so the depth of their joy was greater as well, which is why it was a whole body experience, which is why they burst into song, which is why they were so anticipatory of miracles of God that they actually schlepped out of Egypt these musical instruments. They said, God's going to bring more miracles and we're going to celebrate. The men just weren't tuned in the same way because, again, they didn't feel as deeply the pain because they didn't have the same belief. and therefore they didn't have that same depth of joy. Of course they had belief, of course they had pain, of course they had joy. We just had it to a much greater degree, all of the above. And that's, again, the reason why the women are the redeemers, for this greater belief, which means more sensitive to pain. When you believe, you're more vulnerable. You feel more the pain, and you feel far more the joy. And then we connected it to the Haftorah, which we said was a woman's song, because, again, even though the woman's song was one verse and the men's were like 19, but the woman's song was better. So the Haftorah, that's expressing the energy of the Torah portion, is a song of a woman, is a song of Devorah. And we told the story of Devorah, and we focused on the 2 commandments of Devorah that were so special, why she merited to be the judge of the Jewish people for 40 years. It's pretty cutting edge to be a female judge, judge meaning leader of the people, judge meaning the chief authority of Torah. So the chief Torah authority was a woman, and for 40 years, it was Devorah. And we said, why? Because she was so modest. You think like, no, what do you mean she's so modest? She was so out there. She was out there with the men, learning and teaching them. She was so modest. And therefore she was able to be out there with the men, teaching them, because she was so modest. So we spoke about Devorah and her absolute modesty, meaning beyond the letter of the law, not judging the men inside, only outside, and only under palm trees because they don't give any shade. And also her special connection to lighting the Shabbos candles, and how both of these commandments obviously are very feminine and relate to all of us, and are very strong forces. The Rebbe is saying, because of her deep investment in lighting those Shabbos candles, how we explained last week she did it, and her deep investment in modesty, this is what made her able to be the judge of the Jewish people, and for 40 years. And to give the Jewish people 40 years of peace. We said they never had 40 years of peace in this very chaotic era of lots of shifts and changes, and leaders come and leaders go, and then 40 years respite, 40 years of peace. The Rebbe says, for that you need a woman, because again, women are the redeemers. So this was like a messianic time ushered in by Devorah, that the Jews could enjoy these 40 years of peace. So now we are up to, that was like a brief overview. Hopefully everything made perfect sense and was like, yes. We remember all of that. And now we're at the end of this talk. So the Rebbe says that all of this is supposed to teach us how we're supposed to behave. Meaning we went on a trip through history. We spoke about the women in Egypt, and during the times of the judges, and the women in the desert, and all of this beautiful history. Women, we're all talking about like ancient history, or not so ancient, but still history. The Rebbe says all of this is to tell us how we're supposed to behave today. And this is a general perspective of the Rebbe on everything in Torah. The word Torah, it's an unusual word. What's the root of Torah? Well, Torah comes from the same word as teacher. Torah, the word for teacher in Hebrew is, how do you say teacher in Hebrew? Anyone know?
Melamed.
A melamed is a teacher. It has a slightly different, usually slightly different nuance. But that you are right, Rachel. But the common word for teacher is a moira.
Moira.
A moira or a moira. If it's a man teacher, a woman teacher, that's the most common word you're going to ever find for teacher, especially in modern Hebrew. For sure, you're never going to say melamed. But that you are correct, Rachel. It is a word. It's just not used in the same way. And the word for instruction in Hebrew is hoira'ah. So moira, teacher, hoira'ah, instruction, and Torah all come from the same root word, which means to teach, from which we learn that everything in Torah is to teach us something about our own lives. Never are we ever learning anything as, that's interesting history. That's interesting to know what my ancestors went through. That's interesting to understand what this verse is really saying. It's interesting. Nothing's meant to be interesting. It's all supposed to teach us how we're supposed to live. So all of this interesting information that we acquire is supposed to reflect on us and our work. And especially, as I was saying, in this very auspicious time, which of course is an auspicious time, the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, which if you remember, we had mentioned, is also the exact same day as the passing of his grandmother. Great, 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 very, very righteous woman, Rebbetzin Rivka. And 3 days later, the passing of his mother, a very, very righteous woman, Rebbetzin Stern Sarah. So it's the time of the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, which means there's a lot of spiritual energy out there. You know, it might be unusual for you to think of a passing in that way, but according to Hasidic thought, a yahrzeit, the day someone passes away, the anniversary of the passing, reflects the time when their soul ascends. It's the ascension of the soul. Now, every soul ascends every day. It says, just as we pray 3 times a day, the souls in heaven ascend 3 times a day. So souls are constantly moving. People used to say, well, you can retire after 120, meaning when you pass away, then you can retire. And then Hasidus says, no, there's no retiring in heaven. You're working. We're all workers. Up there, they're working too. What's the work? Getting closer to God. What's the work down here? They're not fighting evil. They're not tempted and tormented by the physicality. Nothing physical there, but it's a process of getting closer and closer to God. So they're not relaxing. They're busy, they're working, they're getting closer and closer to God. But the main ascension of the soul is once a year on the yahrzeit. And that's why a yahrzeit is a very spiritually significant day. That's why it's a day that the Kaddish prayers are said, because the Kaddish prayers are to help the ascension of a soul. If somebody passed away, you should make sure that someone is saying Kaddish on the day they passed away. That date, not the date they were buried. That's not relevant. It's the date of the passing. To make sure someone says Kaddish on that date. We give extra charity on that date. We sponsor or do extra learning on that date. All of this is to aid the ascension of the soul. Now, if we're talking about a tzaddik, we're talking about a perfectly righteous, godly person, we're not worried about them. We're not worried that they need our help to ascend. But rather, because they're also ascending, as every soul ascends on the yahrzeit, they're moving from enormously high to even more enormously high. And that causes tremendous light to be experienced in this world. Tremendous energy is experienced on the day of the passing of a tzaddik, as we have discussed in this class. I remember we really focused on it on the 24th of Tevis, the day of the passing of the Alter Rebbe. And I was telling you all the blessings that we try to access on the day of the passing of a tzaddik. So because this is now in connection to the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, when the Rebbe said this talk, and also that connects to women, like this whole talk is about women, because the passing of his grandmother on the same day and the passing of his mother. I have to tell you a little story about the passing. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, was very, very close to his grandmother, whose name was Rivka, Rebbetzin Rivka. I'll share the story. It might be hard to follow, so if it doesn't really resonate, it's okay. You can ask, but maybe I'm not going to say it so clearly. But when my 4th child was born, my husband, this is a personal story that I'm just sharing on Zoom with everyone here, but when my 4th child was born, my 4th child and my 3rd son, my first son had been named Menachem Mendel. My second son was named after my father, who passed away a little less than 3 months before he was born. Now I have my 3rd son. And my husband really wanted to name him after the Rebbe's father. The Rebbe's father's name was Levi Yitzchak, a very great tzaddik and the father of the Rebbe. And my husband really, really, really wanted to name his child Levi Yitzchak. Now, in the world of Chabad, to clarify the story a little bit more, in Jewish life, you don't give 2 children the same name. So in the world of Chabad, you have a little choice here, because the Rebbe's father's name is Levi Yitzchak, And the previous Rebbe's name is Yosef Yitzchak. So you have the same Yitzchak in both. So you got to make a choice. You're going to name after the Rebbe's father, or you're going to name after the previous Rebbe. You can't do both because they both have the name Yitzchak. Clear story so far, right? So my husband, he has now his third son. He's so excited. And he says, okay, Levi Yitzchak it is for sure. I'm like, let him do whatever he wants. I'm not getting involved. I just had a baby, right? So that's fine. And then I think he wrote into the Rebbe through the Rebbe's letters, maybe right after the baby was born. And in the letter, it spoke about the name Yosef Yitzchak. My husband's like, is the Rebbe telling me something? Probably not. And then a second time, my husband wrote in about something during the week. You know, we name by the day of the circumcision, which is 8 days. So we have here 8 days to get our act together about the name. And then a second time, my husband wrote in about something. And again, the Rebbe was talking about the name Yosef Yitzchak. Now my husband was more like, twice since this child was born, Yosef Yitzchak, Yosef Yitzchak. Maybe the Rebbe's giving me a message. And then my husband wrote in a third time. And the third time also, the letter was talking about the name Yosef Yitzchak. These were 3 different answers, but all of them were talking about the name Yosef Yitzchak. So my husband got the not very subtle hint that our child's name was supposed to be Yosef Yitzchak. So even though he really wanted to name Levi Yitzchak after the Rebbe's father, he put that wish on the side and he named our son Yosef Yitzchak. Fast forward a few years, and I find out something very interesting, which I didn't know at the time when my 4th son was born, that the date of his birth is also the birthday of Rebbetzin Rivka, of the Yosef Yitzchak, who he's named after, the Rebbe Rayatz's grandmother. So they shared a birthday. And I thought that was very, very, very interesting, because the Rebbe Rayatz, Yosef Yitzchak, was very, very, very close to his grandmother, to the degree that when he started girls' schools, he named them after her. There's a series of girls' schools called Beis Rivka, named after her, his grandmother. So I was like, wow, my son is born on the day of his grandmother's birthday, and that's so connected to Yosef Yitzchak. There's something of her energy there in that day, and that's why he's a Yosef Yitzchak. You want a Levi Yitzchak? Sorry, this day the kid's born as a Yosef Yitzchak. So that's a little story on the side. I hope it was clear. So here we have Yosef Yitzchak, the Rebbe Rayatz is passing. Same day as his grandmother, as I was just saying. They were so close that they passed away on the same day, which is very, very, very close. All these things are very significant in Jewish thought. Nothing's random, and connected to the passing of his mother. So this is a time when spiritual energy is very high. All these great people passing away, all their energy is very intense in this world. And the Rebbe says, it's a time when women's energy is very high. It's Rebbetzin Rivka, the grandmother. It's Rebbetzin Shterna Sarah, the mother. And it's the Rebbe Rayatz, who was so connected to women. So a lot of intense women energy. So what does that have to do with us? What that has to do with us, the Rebbe says, is that as Jewish women, we really have to look at ourselves and understand we are those great, glorious women the Rebbe's talking about. You know, when you learn and you say, oh, those amazing women in Egypt, and they believed so much and had so much pain and had so much joy and had so much belief and carried their tambourines in their knapsacks. Oh, the judge, the prophetess, Devorah, she was so amazing. Candle lighting, modest. Whoa. Oh, those women in the desert with their being first at accepting the Torah and better, being first building the tabernacle and better, being first going into Israel and better. The Rebbe says, if you think of it like that, you miss the whole point. What you have to understand is all of those amazing women, that means you. That's what you are. You are that amazing woman. That's how each one of us is supposed to look at ourselves. Me, I'm that amazing woman, like the women in the desert, like the women in Egypt, like Devorah, like Miriam, like Rebbetzin Rivka, Rebbetzin Shterna Sarah, like all these amazing women we're talking about throughout this talk. That's supposed to reflect on how I look at myself. there's a saying of our sages, Mazaro b'chaim afu b'chaim. When your children are alive, you're alive. Which the Rebbe says in this situation means, the Rebbe is going to explain it in two ways. First, what the Rebbe says, that means when we live like them, they live on through us. So this whole beautiful history, if you remember when Orly was talking last week about lighting Shabbos candles, and she said something very beautiful that resonated very much inside of me. She said when she first started lighting Shabbos candles, she didn't do it maybe from a spiritual imperative. She did it almost more like historically, feeling this connection to all the previous generations. And I told her then that that very much resonates in me, and I often feel something similar. And in a sense, that's what the Rebbe is saying here about all of this past, all of these amazing Jewish women, the redeemers of every generation. That's us. All of the power, like link upon link upon link in the chain, has now come to the finish line, has come to us. So when we make decisions to be those redeemers, to be those modest women, to be those women dedicated to lighting the candle, to be those women dedicated to Torah, dedicated to building God's tabernacle, we're giving them all life. They're all alive through us. And that's what it means. Just as his children are alive, he is alive. When your children live the way you lived, your life continues through them. So if you think of someone, if you know someone, if maybe you have someone that passed away, but you're leading your life in a way that's because of them and from them, they continue to live through you. I know Rachel shared with us a few times about her grandfather and her connection to him and her feeling of him as the catalyst to her journey to God. So as Rachel makes the choices she makes, her grandfather's alive through her. And it's true for anyone that lives as their parents lived. Now, that's not always true, because sometimes you're not living as your parents lived, sometimes making choices different. But when you have that situation that you're living as those that came before you lived, then they continue to live through you. So the Rebbe is saying, everything I said to you until now, don't view as beautiful history. That's not what I want you to take from this. I want you to view it as, this is telling me who I am. This is telling me the power I have. And now I need to make a different choice, perhaps, than I've made in the past. A better choice, a choice more in line with how their choices were. And when I make those choices, then they're living through me. And then the Rebbe says that, of course, we can take this on the next level, because the whole idea of the power of women is most especially in bringing redemption, that we are the redeemers. Not that they were the redeemers, that we are the redeemers. Again, when we look in the mirror, it's like me, the woman in the desert, the woman in Egypt, Devorah, Rivka, Representative Star, me. So we are the redeemers. So when we take that extra step to live and be like them, we could literally be taking the step to cause redemption. And then we literally create them back in life, because of course, the very basic tenet of Judaism is the resurrection of the dead. That's not an original to Christianity concept, it's an original to Judaism concept. And when is the resurrection of the dead? By the complete revelation of the redemption of the Mashiach, the Messiah. So by women doing their job, we literally create the redemption, literally create the resurrection of the dead. And then all these women, these great, glorious women of the past, will once again be alive physically. And truly it will be fulfilled that just as their children are alive, they're alive. Because we, as the children, living as they lived, give them spiritual life through us, and then can ultimately give them physical life. Now the Rebbe concludes And so the Rebbe here in general just gave us a plug to like get our act together. He gave us a plug to work, right? A mandate to work, a mandate to improve, a mandate to be closer to the great models that we've been discussing throughout this talk. And now, in the final message of this talk, the Rebbe is going to focus on a very specific thing he wants us to do. Meaning, what you could take from the talk in general was be invested in God, like the women of the desert, that we are actually a reincarnation of. Be invested in redemption, like we are a reincarnation of. Feel the pain of exile and the joy in redemption. And infuse what we do with modesty, with dignity, and really be committed to those laws of modesty and those laws of lighting the Shabbos candles. Those were sort of the specific instructions of the talk. But now the Rebbe is concluding, so obviously the conclusion is the point you're going to walk away with if you forget everything else. So this is the point specifically the Rebbe wants us to take on from this talk. And it's a point about song. And the Rebbe says that we have a very special message to women about song. As we noted in this talk, connecting to the Torah portion, we were speaking about women's songs. We spoke about the song of Miriam and the women, and we explained how because they were dancing and had the musical instruments, it was better than the men's. And we said, therefore, the Haftorah, the portion of the prophets that we read after the Torah, was also a woman's song. It was Devorah's song. So we spoke about women's songs. Now the Rebbe says that is something that we all need to absorb this message. Why was their song so special in the desert? Well, they danced and they had musical instruments. And why did we say they had musical instruments? Because they knew God was going to redeem them. So they were ready. So that point the Rebbe is now focusing on. And the Rebbe says, just as those righteous women, and we again are a reincarnation of those righteous women, we were those righteous women, just as those righteous women in Egypt were so confident that God was going to do miracles for them. I mean, they just went through the 10 plagues. They went through a lot of miracles. They said, we're not done. God's not done. We know there's going to be more miracles. They were so confident that when they packed up their bags, they made sure to bring musical instruments, which isn't what you normally bring when you're going for a trip in the desert. But they made sure to bring musical instruments because they knew God was going to redeem them and they wanted to be ready. The Rebbe says that's what needs to happen now. For all these wonderful, beautiful, righteous Jewish women, they have to be as confident. They have to be as certain. And then the Rebbe says, and surely they are certain. Surely they are confident that immediately God is going to bring redemption. All right, so what does the Rebbe want me to take? Music lessons? Like, where is this leading to? So the Rebbe spells it out. The Rebbe says, and therefore, because they, meaning we, are so confident that any moment God's going to bring redemption, so already now, before the redemption materializes, in the last moments of exile, we are already singing and dancing and playing musical instruments to celebrate the redemption. So the Rebbe is giving a very specific thing he wants from us. Let me translate this into the vernacular. What is the Rebbe saying he wants? He wants us to really believe that the redemption is coming now. He wants us to really believe it. And he wants us to believe it so strongly that we live it. And how is he now saying we live it? that we're already parting, that we're already celebrating, that we're already rejoicing, that we're already anticipating it's happening now, and this is so super exciting. It says about Chizkiah, this the Rebbe doesn't say in the talk, but I'm bringing it in here. Chizkiah was a very, very, very great leader of the Jewish people. He was a Davidic king. He was a direct descendant of David. And he's considered one of the greatest kings we ever had. Meaning there's David and Solomon. And then shortly after David and Solomon in the totem pole of the great Jewish kings is Chizkiah. One of the greatest, greatest, greatest kings we ever had. He was so great that it says in the Talmud that God wanted to make him Mashiach. God wanted to bring Mashiach. God wanted him to be Mashiach. He should be the Redeemer. He deserves it. He's so great. So it says in the Talmud that the force of judgment started arguing the case with God and said, what are you talking about? How could Chizkiah be the Redeemer? God's like, oh my gosh, Chizkiah, he's so great. And the force of judgment says, well, you made for him all these super amazing miracles, as is recounted in the prophets. He was like deathly ill, and you saved him. And the mighty armies of Sancheriv were supposed to destroy the Jewish people, and you made this crazy miracle and saved him. And he didn't thank you. So if he didn't sing praise to you after such amazing miracles, how in the world could you make him Redeemer? And okay, that he won. And God did not make him Redeemer, and we didn't have Mashiach then. That's what's recounted in the Talmud. What's a little hard to understand about this piece of Talmud is that if you look in the prophets, where it discusses Chizkiah and his miracles, you see very clearly that he thanked God. I mean, it's written right there in the verses that he sang praise to God for these great miracles. So the question is, what's going on? God says, Chizkiah, he's the Redeemer. Judgment says, no, you made him these great miracles. He didn't thank you. He doesn't deserve to be the Redeemer. And God says, okay, you're right. And we're like, wait a minute, guys, read the books, read the prophets. Chizkiah 100% thanked God for the miracles. What are you talking about? So there's a great tzaddik whose name was he was referred to as the Shalah HaKadosh. That's an acronym after his book. His main work is called Shnei Luchos HaBris, which the first letters of that title spell out Shalah. That's why it's called the Shalah HaKadosh. Horowitzes and Gorowitzes, if you know any, are generally his descendants. A very, very great Jewish sage and saint, leader of the Jewish people. So he explains this. And he says what was going on. It wasn't that Chizkiah didn't thank God. Of course he thanked God. But Chizkiah thanked God after the miracles. After he had this amazing recovery, after he had this amazing miraculous defeat of Sancheriv, Chizkiah thanked God. And true praise is that you thank God when you're still sick and when the armies of Sancheriv are all set to decimate you. And that's what Chizkiah didn't do. And that's what the attribute of judgment means. Chizkiah didn't praise you. He praised you. He thanked you. Afterwards, real praise is before. Rivka, do you have a question?
I'm sorry. It was when you were talking about.
I just noticed now this little yellow thing. I'm like, what is that? Oh, that's a hand. Oh, she has a question.
When you were saying women of the desert, and then I remember, so you were saying that women did not participate in the sin of the golden calf, right? But my question is, did women participate in the sin of the spies? That
No,
was
they did not.
So it means that women who left Egypt.
So they went into Israel, exactly.
Went into Israel.
They went into Israel and the men did not.
It's amazing that women didn't cry like men did, because women cry more and scared more of.
Because women are believers in a way that men are not. Now,
Now,
obviously, what I'm saying is so shocking to you because you never realized that. Probably you did realize it. Women are believers in a way that men are not. And yes, as Rivka is saying correctly, in the big sins in the desert, the women stayed loyal. They stayed loyal by the idolatry of the golden calf. They stayed loyal by the other humongous transgression of the Jewish people believing in the spies. Only the Jewish men believed in the spies. The Jewish women did not believe in the spies. And also by the rebellion of Korach, which was also a pretty serious thing. It wasn't the whole Jewish people, but we see also there, that's actually the first time, people say, when did women start covering their hair? Like, at what point did women cover their hair? Women covered their hair from the beginning. And we see this because in the desert, when there was this rebellion of Korach, his chief officer of the rebellion, we see in the beginning, he's so big that he's listed as the officers from the rebellion, but actually when the whole thing panned out and they all died, he wasn't there. So the question is, where'd he go? His name was On Ben Peles. What happened to On Ben Peles? He's right there in the beginning of the fight, and then he disappears and he doesn't die with the rest of them. And the sages say On Ben Peles had a very wise wife, and she understood what was going to happen, but she couldn't think how she's supposed to tell her husband, like, dump all your friends, and I know what's going to happen. I mean, she was a woman. She was smart enough to know that wouldn't work. So being a wise woman, she came up with a strategy, and it says that she sat outside of her tent and she uncovered her hair. She took off her hair covering. So she was sitting outside of her tent, this married woman with her hair uncovered. And when the agents came to round up all the rebels for the rebellion, when these agents were approaching the tent of On Ben Peles, and they saw in front of it was a woman with her hair uncovered, his wife, they were like, whoa, we can't go there, whoa, and they ran away. And that's how On Ben Peles wasn't part of the rebellion in the end, because he never got called, because his wise wife protected him by uncovering her hair, where we see again the wisdom of the women, and that's our, so historically back do we see that obviously Jewish women always covered their hair. So yes, in all of these major issues in the desert, we consistently saw that the women stayed loyal. Why? Because they believed more. They believed more. And that goes back to, again, as we said, Israel, that it says the women loved Israel more than the men. And that's why the men by the spies started crying, and the women said, no, we want to go to Israel. So going back to Chizkiah, so here's Chizkiah, who definitely praised God. It's written in the verses of the prophets, but he praised God afterwards. And that is what the Shlach HaKadosh says is what this attribute of judgment means. That how could you make him a Mashiach? He didn't praise you. He praised you. He praised afterwards. Real praise is before the miracle. And the Shlach HaKadosh says, actually, interestingly, that's happened also by the splitting of the sea, which is what we're talking about here. So the men sang and the women sang. And it says in the Medrash that the angels also wanted to sing praise for God of this amazing miracle he made, saving the Jewish people. Unbelievable. And when they wanted to sing praise, God said no. God didn't let them. And God said, my creatures are drowning and you're going to praise me? Which sounds like God saying, oh, these are my creatures. How could you sing when my creatures are drowning? And we're like, that's weird. What do you mean your creatures are drowning? These are horrible Egyptians that tortured your children for years and years and years. Of course the angels are rejoicing when they're drowning. What's the problem? So the Shlach says it's the same issue. It's a matter of timing. God's saying, now you wake up, angels of mine. Now you want to praise God. When the Egyptians drowned, no thanks. If you really want to praise me, you should have praised me when the Egyptians were pursuing the Jews. You should have already started singing praise and believing in the salvation. So these concepts, which the Rebbe doesn't bring in the talk that I just brought in, that the Shlach says about Chizkiah, who praised God after the miracle, about the angels who praised God, who wanted to praise God after the miracle. This is the point the Rebbe is making here. He's saying to the righteous women of the generation, meaning us, because we're learning this, that I want you already now, before you see the redemption, to sing, to rejoice, to play instruments, to give praise to God for the redemption that's unfolding. This, by the way, is a powerful tool for us also in our lives, in our personal lives, for our personal redemptions. That for anything on your must-have, need, wish list of what you want from God, a very strong way to create it is to already thank God for it. So especially since this talk, people have done this when they're in a situation where they need God's salvation, using this idea that the Rebbe is bringing. And again, as I'm saying, this idea also has its historical roots in the Shalosh concept with Chizkiah and with the angels, that when you need a salvation, instead of waiting for the salvation and crying to God that you need the salvation, celebrating and rejoicing and thanking God for the salvation that you know is occurring. That's a very powerful way to draw down salvation. I know for myself, I have my top 3, I'll call them, things that I'm waiting for God to do. I'm very confident he's going to do them. I'm just sort of waiting. And I constantly, instead of telling God, I need this, I try to tell God, thank you. Thank you for giving me this. I'm so excited. Thank you for giving me this huge present. Thank you for this huge present. Thank you for this huge present. Thanking God for the huge presents that I know are unfolding before I even see them, already thanking. That's what the Rebbe is saying. It's a very powerful and practical message. Before we see the redemption, thanking God for the redemption. And the thanking God for the redemption creates the redemption. And the Rebbe said, now here, going back to what the Rebbe, now I'm saying this applies also in our own personal salvations that we need personally. Of course, most strongly is this overarching need of the entire world for redemption, for the ultimate redemption. So the Rebbe says, here I'm telling you to already start singing to God your praise for the redemption. Now, that doesn't mean we're not right now in exile. And that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of pain now. But you have to be aware of both. Meaning what's natural for us to be aware of is the pain. That we don't have to work on. But the Rebbe says, you're aware of the pain. And you're supposed to be aware of the pain. But at the same time, and actually more strongly, be aware of the joy and belief and certainty in the imminency of redemption. Now the Rebbe says, together with the prayer, the request, the demand to God to bring the redemption immediately, because there's a lot of pain. And when we're in that space of asking God to bring the redemption, we're feeling the pain, we're feeling the bitterness, we're feeling the suffering. That's not a joyous, elated moment. It's a painful, suffering moment. And it's been a long exile. It's been a hard exile. And there's pain in our world today. And each of us personally could have a lot of pain going on in our own personal lives. And that pain's real. And we turn to God and we say, until when, until when, until when? Is there this painful suffering in your world? And we're supposed to feel that. But more than that, we're supposed to be permeated with joy. And the joy is so great that it should naturally express itself in song because of our absolute confidence that Mashiach is coming now. So the Rebbe is saying we need both. Just like in Egypt, Miriam's women, they had more pain and they had more belief and they had more joy. So we need both. We're supposed to be in touch with reality, and therefore there's a lot of pain in our world. And we're supposed to feel the pain and turn to God and demand redemption, because this is crazy. Why are we still in exile? And why is this world so messed up? And why is there so much difficulty and pain every single step of the way? And at the same time, even more than that, we're supposed to feel joy because we know what's happening now. We're supposed to feel joy. We're supposed to feel confidence. We're supposed to feel so secure and so elated. And that feeling is supposed to be even stronger than the natural feeling of pain over all the horrors that are happening. Even more than that is the joy in the redemption that's unfolding. And the Rebbe says that's what we should have. We should truly all be singing that 10th song. It says that the Jewish people will sing 10 songs of praise to God. Obviously, the song after the splitting of the sea was the first. And the Song of Devorah was one of the 10. And the song that they sang, for those of you that know, in the Torah verses, at the end of the 40 years, they sang a song thanking God for the well of water and all those miracles. That was one of them. And the 10th and final song is the song that we will sing by the redemption. So as we now should already be singing praises to God for bringing the redemption, this itself should be the catalyst to allow the redemption to unfold, and for all the Jewish people, and not just the Jewish people, for the entire world to in unison sing to God that 10th song of the absolute redemption. So that was this talk, and I thought it just was a very powerful pitch for us to know who we truly are, what we are truly capable of, and to live up to the trust and belief and faith that the Rebbe has in us, that we're going to do it. And when we know what we're supposed to be doing, it's another step toward doing it. So that was that talk. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on any of that? Besides anything we've already said? Okay.
Cyril, so it's just praising God in our own words for redemption now.
Mm-hmm. I remember
Because
once.
You said song, but we don't know this song.
It's whatever song that your heart wants you to sing. Make it a praise of God. I remember once something it was going on in my school, a very big serious thing. So we made a very, very big party. And we said, okay, this is a celebration party. It was a really beautiful party because we're going to celebrate the salvation. And it was very powerful that as we were in the throes of whatever we were going through, to say we're celebrating God's salvation, because that's how we create God's salvation, is by celebrating it. So it's whatever your heart tells you to sing, but thanking God for the personal good that you know is unfolding, and thanking God for the cosmic good that you know is unfolding. Anyone else? Any other questions? Any other thoughts on this? Okay, so we have like 4 minutes. So let's continue with Shabbos. So for like 2 weeks, I didn't bring my book, so I was talking about something else. And now we're getting back to what we're talking about in the book. And I opened up to the wrong place. So there's a certain, again, this is based on agriculture that was used for the tabernacle, for the temple, but I'm just thinking of the practical application of this. This is called dush. This is a type of winnowing, which causes separation of the grain from the shaft. But how we relate to it in our world has to do actually with peeling. Like if we're removing the peel from a fruit or vegetable, this could be similar to this concept. So are you allowed to peel a fruit or vegetable on Shabbos if we're saying peeling is very similar to this forbidden activity? And the answer is yes, you are, in case you started wondering. But because of this forbidden form of winnowing that's similar to this peeling concept, you can only peel something that you're going to use then. Meaning you could not make, I don't know if you would do this, but if you were going to have like those cute little oranges, those cuties, and they're very easy to peel, and you're going to make like a whole pile of like peeled oranges, and then, you know, just have them in a bowl or put them out, then you can't do that. It has to be as they're being eaten. So it's no problem putting out the oranges for each person to take and peel and eat. No problem to peel if you're going to eat it. No problem if you're making a salad for the meal to peel your vegetables to make the salad. But if you're already peeling and you're like, oh, I think I want to peel another cucumber and I'm just going to put it in a bag, so I'll have it for later. It'll be easy just as a snack. We could just slice it up. It's already peeled. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to peel beyond what you need then to eat because of this prohibition of dash. Something else from a different perspective that also is this forbidden activity has to do with squeezing fruit juices. That also, it's sort of separating the good from the bad within this fruit. Now, biblically, or from the Torah, biblically is the wrong word, what's absolutely forbidden is olives and grapes. Because from olives comes olive oil, and from grapes comes grape juice, comes wine. So because these are two important items, then obviously if someone's squeezing them, they're squeezing them to produce these liquids. It's not like, oh yeah, it just happened. No, this is important liquids. So that's why it's completely forbidden. There's no way to do that on Shabbos. But the rabbi said we got to be careful from all fruit juices. So what can you do? Let's say you want lemon juice in your tea. What are you allowed to do? So what you're not allowed to do is squeeze a lemon into a cup and have now lemon juice, which you then fresh lemon juice, which you pour into your tea. That is forbidden. But what you're allowed to do, which is sort of getting around the issue, but it's allowed, so this is legal, is if you would take the lemon, let's say, and pour it onto a solid like sugar. So you're not making lemon juice. You're not allowed to make lemon juice, that's forbidden. But you're allowed to make lemon sugar, that's permissible. So if you pour the lemon juice onto the sugar, so it just becomes lemony sugar, that you then can use for your tea, so it can have that lemon taste, or you could just take a slice, which might be simpler. But it's permissible. For the same reason, you will be allowed to take a lemon and squeeze it over a salad. Because you're taking the lemon and you're squeezing it on the salad, you're not creating juice, it's going directly onto a salad. Permissible. But to take the lemon and squeeze it into a drink, like into a tea, that's forbidden because that'll be much more obviously creating a juice, and that the sages prohibited. Any questions on any of those laws or anything else about Shabbos?
Hi, Sarah. Yes,
Hi,
about peeling. I'm a little bit confused. I was under the impression that peeling is not allowed in Shabbos, period. And also, like, separating bad from good, right? So maybe I don't understand it
So
very well.
I understand your question because I wasn't speaking clearly. I was focusing on this issue, and you're correct because there's another issue which I wasn't thinking about. When you were told you can't peel, what was meant was peeling with a peeler. You're allowed to peel on Shabbos. You're not allowed to peel with a peeler on Shabbos. So if you have a cucumber and you're making a salad, you are 100% allowed to peel that cucumber on Shabbos. What I was saying was,
when you say peel, I understand that you can peel orange with your hand. You
right.
cannot peel cucumber with your hand.
Right. You can't peel a cucumber with your hand. You can peel a cucumber with a knife. So you can't peel a cucumber with a peeler.
Okay, so you can use knife to take out the outer whatever skin.
The skin.
Right? You just cannot use a tool called peeler.
You can't use a tool because there's a prohibition of using these specific tools. So a knife is considered like an extension of your hand. Our sages view the knife as an extension of your hand. So that's why a knife is permitted to be used on Shabbos. But a peeler is considered a tool. It's not considered an extension of your hand. A peeler is pretty modern. You know, in the 1920s and 30s, I don't know if they even have peelers yet. So a peeler is considered a tool. It's not an extension of your hand, and you're not allowed to use it on Shabbos.
Okay, so peeler is not allowed to
Peeler is
use.
not
Okay,
allowed
so,
to be used.
okay,
You can
so
peel with a knife. You're 100% right. I wasn't thinking about that part of the law. I was thinking about this part of the law. So what I was saying was, when you're peeling your cucumbers for your salad, you can't peel an extra one because you're gonna snack on it in the afternoon.
right, but that's much bigger prohibition. You cannot cook on Shabbos food that you're going to eat after Shabbos.
Right, but also even Shabbos afternoon, you could not peel, if you're making a salad for your lunch, you can't peel an extra cucumber to have for later in the afternoon. It's still Shabbos, but you can't have a peel. You can right then peel the cucumber, but you can't peel it in advance. If you're peeling something, you're peeling it to use then. You can't peel in advance. So just like I was giving the example of peeling a bunch of oranges, I don't know if a person would do this, or maybe peeling a bunch of apples, like Pesach time, when, I mean, we peel all our fruits and vegetables. So I could just imagine, you know, peeling a bunch of apples on Shabbos, Pesach, because we don't eat with the peel, and you just have it out there. So if someone wants to munch on an apple, it's already peeled. No, you're not allowed to do that.
Then that's so confusing. Okay, so it's a lot of laws here.
So there's three. I didn't even finish. Wait. So we're talking about peeling. Let me try to make this really clear because I understand the confusion. There's three things you have to remember about peeling. You raised two, I raised one. The first thing is only peel what you're going to use then. That's the first law about peeling. Don't peel for later, including later in Shabbos day. Only peel what you're going to use then. That was the first law. The second law about peeling, as you raised correctly, is don't use a peeler. Only use a knife. You're not allowed to use a peeler. You're only allowed to use a knife. The third law, which you alluded to about peeling, and you are correct, is that when you're peeling, you should leave some of the fruit, the flesh of the fruit or vegetable, on the peel. So there's three things you have to remember with peeling. Only peel what you're going to eat then. Don't use a peeler, just a knife. And when you're peeling, you can't make a precise cut that you separate peel and there's no flesh on it. Just peel and all the flesh stays on the fruit. You're not allowed to do that for the reason Chava said, which is the prohibition of separating. Because there's a prohibition of separating, if we would perfectly peel it, so the peel is like naked of the flesh, then we separated, and that's also problematic. So how we get around that is, if you're peeling the cucumber, leave a certain amount of the flesh of the cucumber on the peel. That's very important. So there's 3 points about peeling. Only what you need, not with a peeler. And as you peel with the knife, make sure some of the flesh of the fruit or vegetable stays with the peel. Now, obviously, if you're peeling your orange, it's it's a different situation. But if you're peeling with a knife, like a cucumber or a zucchini, something like that, a melon, pineapple, cantaloupe, watermelon, all of those melons, that's always an issue. And you want to peel it in such a way that some of the flesh stays on the peel.
So what about the orange or mandarin?
What about oranges? So with oranges, they're not really considered as closely clinging originally to the fruit, right? So therefore, it's not considered the same problem of separation.
Okay. Let's say, so a separate, another problem, taking bad out of good instead of good out of bad.
That is one of the hardest things I personally find in the laws of Shabbos. What Chava is now saying, it drives me crazy. I always feel very relaxed on the holidays because that law does not apply on the holidays. And I literally feel the relief that I don't have to worry about this. It drives me crazy all day long because, and I've realized this over many years of studying and thinking about and keeping the Shabbos. Thank God I've kept the Shabbos my whole life. So being an expert at keeping the Shabbos for over 50 years and someone that studied it many times and taught it many times, I still find this very challenging. And I realize this is the hardest part of keeping the Shabbos if you're committed to keeping the Shabbos. Meaning, if you're not committed to keeping the Shabbos, any part of keeping the Shabbos is hard. And you can't use your cell phone for however many hours you're keeping Shabbos. That could drive you crazy. You can't get into your car. That could drive you crazy. So I'm not talking about that level of hard. I'm talking about you're 100% committed. You are observing the Sabbath. You learned the laws. Now, this, what Chava just said, is what drives you crazy. Because it's insidious. It comes up all over the place. And you always have to remember. It's challenging. I can explain the laws. And just the more you think about the laws, the more situations you find when these laws come up. Rivka.
Where else does it come up? Because
everywhere.
With
Everywhere
avocado.
you turn, it comes up.
With me, it's avocado. I mean,
avocado pit for sure comes up.
Avocado.
And
but
if you took out a shirt for yourself or your child, and then you decided that he refuses to wear it, or you took a pair of stockings and they have a run in it, or you took two books out of the shelf. Can you take out two books at the same time or not? And can you return the books at the same time or not? It comes up anywhere you look. You're putting away your dishes, you're putting away your silverware, you're setting your table. It's all over the place. You're doing this all day long. It's really, trust me, it's something you have to be very focused on. It is, I came to the realization that for an Orthodox person, meaning an Orthodox person I'm defining here as someone who is committing to keep Sabbath and they learn the basic laws, this is probably where they're going to mess up more than any other area. It is the most subtle area. It's all over the place. So what are the laws? There's three simple things you have to remember. It's very simple. You just have to always remember it. That's the challenge. The three simple things are when you are selecting something, you can only select good from bad with your hand. Remember, a fork or knife is considered an extension of the hand. This is the part that's hardest for me, for immediate use. I'll go over it again. You can only take good from bad. You can never take bad from good. Only good from bad, only with your hand, not with a tool, and for immediate use. So, just a simple little example, if you had a bowl of cherries and you see some of them are spoiling, you can't take out the bad cherries. You can take out the good cherries with your hand, or for that matter, with a spoon. That would be considered an extension of your hand. But you can only take out the good cherries if you're going to use them immediately. But if you can take out the good cherries and then put them in your fridge, you're not allowed to do that, because it has to be for immediate use. So if you're serving them now, you can pick out all the good cherries, put them in a bowl and serve them. Good from bad, with your hand, immediate use. Check, check, check. You're totally kosher. But if you take out the bad cherries, if you have a special cherry picking tool, and if you pick out the good cherries with your hand and then stick them in the fridge, you still have a problem because it wasn't immediate use. So those are the three things you have to keep in mind. And as I'm saying, I do believe, I agree with Chava. This is my personal feeling. This is the hardest thing for someone who is committed and keeping the laws, because it comes up all the time. And you're not thinking about it and you don't realize. It's not like you're tempted to do the wrong thing. You just don't even realize. And then oops. And then I'm like, wait, how do I make this immediate use? What do I do? It has to be immediate use. What am I doing to make it immediate use? Where's the immediate use? If I'm putting away my children's shirt, I don't. I for this reason, even though it'd be the easiest day for me to do it because I have more time, I do not clean my son's mess, all of his toys on Shabbos. because I'm just too likely to make a mistake. And it's just not worth it to mess up Shabbos over his toys. But sometimes he really he forces me because he knows I come in the room and I clean up. So Mom, you're supposed to clean up. So it's okay, good from bad with my hand, but then what's the immediate use? I'm the immediate use is that I have the pleasure of a clean room. I have a pleasure that the toys are organized. So therefore I have to do something to create that pleasure and oh, isn't it nice? We're enjoying these 30 seconds that we're going to sit here in this clean little space in his mess of a room because it's clean, because otherwise I had no use out of it. And if I didn't use it, I'm not allowed to do it. Or I'm saying, if you would take out of your drawer 2 pairs of stockings, because you say, yeah, some of them maybe have a run. So I'm going to take 1 pair and then put it on. I'm going to take 2. You go to the bathroom to change. You have your 2 pairs of stockings. And the first one you put on was perfectly good. Now, what do you do with the second one? What do you do with it? If you put it back, you selected it as the bad item. You're not allowed to do that. What do you do with it? What do you do at this point? Just jump it in the bathroom? Okay, maybe. Otherwise, how are you allowed to put it back in the drawer? So the legal way you're allowed to put it back in the drawer is to put it on, because then you had use out of it. So then you're just returning it after you used it. But if you didn't put it on and you just put it back in your drawer, that means it was discarded. It's the bad one and you selected it. So you got a problem. So I'm just showing you, this comes up all the time, all over the place. And it's something you just have to really just be on the lookout for. Good from bad, with my hand, that's easy. Usually it's with hand, that's not the problem. And for immediate use. And
So from avocado, it's not a problem to take the meat out of skin with a spoon. That would be
the problem that I have with, there's actually a number of problems with avocados. Avocados are very problematic on Shabbos for a different reason. But the problem that Rivka's meaning, my problem with the avocado from that angle is, what do I do with the pit? How do I get the pit out of the bowl?
But if you get meat out of everything and pit just stays there.
That's fine.
You do it around the pit. Yeah.
That's fine. If you would take the avocado, cut it in half or something, so you're holding half avocado and you're scooping out the fruit, leaving enough and that shell and leaving the pit where it is, that's not a problem. It's good from the bad with a spoon, which you're allowed to use. That'd be considered an extension of your hand for immediate use. You're going to serve it.
How about onion?
So it'll be the same thing.
Peel?
You're allowed to peel. Peeling is not a problem. We just said you're allowed to peel as long as you try to maintain some of the flesh on the peel.
Okay.
But some fruits are very difficult, like going back to what Chava was mentioning about borer. Again, there are ways to get around it, but the simplest thing, let's say you had honeydew melon or cantaloupe. So then you have all the seeds in the middle. So if you just scoop out those seeds, you just messed up. That was bad from good, right? Let's think of a honeydew melon or a cantaloupe. You cut it in half. You want to serve it, however you serve it, wedges, cubes, you want to serve it. Well, what do you do with all the seeds? Well, you take a spoon and you toss them. So you just separated bad from good. That's forbidden. So what do? So one thing you could do is just cut enough of the flesh with it, sort of the same idea as the peel, that you're not really separating the seeds. You're throwing out the seeds plus a lot of the fruit. So that's okay. But if you're a little organized, what's just better is to cut it in half and scoop out the seeds before Shabbos. So you just don't have to deal with it. It makes life much easier.
The same with avocado, probably.
Yeah, but the avocado is going to get not as good. The avocado is going to get a little bad, but the cantaloupe or the honeydew melon doesn't really hurt it.
An hour, nothing will happen.
Yeah, if you're going to eat an hour later, it's not going to be a big deal. And in general, if you can, for other halachic problems, it's much better to make the avocado before Shabbos. Avocados have other problems. So therefore, it's just better to do it before Shabbos if you can. Egg salad is a big problem. Lots of problems you can have making egg salad on Shabbos. Just better make it before.
What a simple cucumber. that has like ends, you know, that usually
Yes.
people cut off.
You could cut it off. It's considered like peeling it, as long as you take, which you would definitely do with the ends, make sure there's some of the flesh of the cucumber on it. No problem.
No problem to
No
cut
problem.
it
It's
off?
just, you're peeling it. It's part of peeling. That's what our sages call the way of eating. So it's fine, because that's just how you're eating it, and it's fine, because you're going to cut off enough of the flesh of the cucumber with it, so you didn't have the separating issue, and it's just like a part of the process of peeling it. Not a problem.
Interesting. You're still separating bad from good.
So that's why you're taking the flesh of the cucumber with the end. So part of the good is with it. So it's not bad from good. It's good and bad together.
Okay.
That's the whole idea of peeling. It's good and bad together. So it's not separating, because you're taking the flesh of the cucumber with the peel. So it's not the peel, the bad, from the good, the flesh. It's good and bad together. It's just like if you had, you know, if somebody wanted to save their soup and they saw, I don't know, something in the soup, they can't pick that thing out and toss it. But if they poured out the whole soup until including that point, it's not a problem, because good and bad are together. So you didn't separate anything.
So you can take a spoon, not pour out the whole, but can you take a spoon that will have soup and that one thing?
You have to be careful. You have to take enough of the soup with. So it's
Okay.
I mean, in theory, you could. In practice, I mean, probably you should throw it out, or at least take like a ladle with a lot of it. You shouldn't take like a little teaspoon and there's a little bit of soup with that thing. It's you would want like a lot of the soup to go with. So it's very obviously, it's just part of the soup, and no separation occurred.
Okay.
But going to what Rachel was saying about avocado or egg salad, there are other problems that have nothing to do with separation. There's other issues with Shabbos, and that's why egg salad and avocado, much better to make it before Shabbos, and don't make it on Shabbos. Much, much better for just nothing to do with separating. Now you know how to deal with separating, but there's other issues also.
Egg salad, because you have to peel the egg? Or
Not because they have to peel the eggs. Peeling the eggs is not a problem if you're peeling them for immediate use. The problem with like egg salad and avocado has to do with a prohibition called grinding, like making a paste-like mixture, like the egg salad becomes, or that avocado becomes. It becomes problematic to make it in small pieces, and it becomes problematic in terms of just different there's a lot of different laws of Shabbos. There's also, you know, you have to make sure you first put the oil, you have to put like oil or something on it. You can never directly put salt on a vegetable or a fruit on Shabbos. There always has to be a liquid. So you can't like directly, you can't like take an egg and just, again, most people do put in like oil or mayonnaise, but you would have to put that in before you would put in the seasonings, because you can't directly salt it on Shabbos.
Better to make a dressing.
So you can make the dressing, and if you have a liquid starting the dressing, then you could put in your seasonings and your salt, and then you could pour that on your salad or your eggs or anything. You can't directly put salt on a vegetable. Let's take avocado. Okay, so for me, I don't need to put any liquid. I would just maybe put in a little salt, pepper, I'm fine, but I'm not allowed to do that, because you can't put salt directly on a vegetable. There has to be a liquid. Fine. So I'm going to put a liquid. I'll put lemon juice. But if I put a little bit of lemon juice and then the salt and the pepper, then the lemon juice is causing the whole thing to congeal because of the nature of the avocado. And plus that little bit of liquid, now it's congealing. That's a different problem on Shabbos. So for me, basically, if I'm going to eat an avocado on Shabbos, I just put on nothing. No salt, no seasonings, no liquid, just the avocado straight. Or I have to put a lot of the liquid so it doesn't congeal, so it becomes loose instead of stuck together. Because you can't make something stuck together on Shabbos. That's part of like grinding, making a mass. Taking an item and making it into lots of small pieces, it starts congealing, like egg salad or avocado. So you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. So that's why basically the best thing is to do it before Shabbos, so you don't deal with any of these problems. All right, that was a long class. class. Okay. So hopefully people gained. Hopefully there was some practical application. Now you all know how to make your egg salads or your avocados or your plain cucumbers. And how to select good from bad with your hand for immediate use, and what to do with stockings and messy rooms and all of the above. See, this is so practical, so relevant. And being the wonderful, righteous women that are bringing redemption, we want to serve God in every way possible. And as we enhance keeping Shabbos, it's definitely a way of saying, God, we love you, we believe in you, and we want redemption now. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.